Now those were top, got it.
No, blooper reel. Okay.
My turn.
Welcome back, everybody. Episode 49 of the Leonis Report. It's the first day of the 4th anniversary to War of the Visions here in Global. JB, happy Monday. How's it going, man?
It's going pretty good. Happy anniversary. We got off to a little bit of a rocky start this morning with the unscheduled maintenance, but apparently there was issues with the Square Enix bridge. Still no compensation. I guess they're still considering it. So hopefully they don't forget about that. It was down for a good 3 to 4 hours. So but yeah, other than that, things are good. You know, it was pretty exciting. I was very excited to wake up today and get into the game, and unfortunately I had to wait. But I was able to get in there and pull on Jeume and also Oldoa.
You were.
Pulls weren't great, unfortunately, but did manage to dump most of my Visior to get them both. How about you? How did it go?
I was exceptionally fortunate. I went for Oldoa first as my strategy because a little more limited in nature and the shard acquisition. That my goal was get her, and then I'll decide depending on how expensive it is. And I think I got her on the second lap of her free banner. So very lucky there. I'm like, all right, I think it was like, I don't know, 20,000 viz to play with. And I went for Jeume on the free banner. I was not going to pay the 200. And I got her on the 25% drop on the last step of the first round of it. So I got them both. It was still like double digit viz, like probably 15,000 viz, but overall, like for those two units, I'm very happy.
I think anytime you can get a 100 cost for 15,000 or under, like you're well on your way. That's you're doing well. For me, I got Jeume. I think it was 17K or 18K, and then unfortunately I had to full pity on Oldoa, which was the real
Oh,
backbreaker. So
well, you have her maxed at the moment that you used her in Guild Wars today with some very good results that we are going to showcase here for you all when we do talk about Oldoa, just for some, you know, live action fun here in Global. But let's recap first what we'll go through tonight. We are going to talk about the live stream itself from Friday. We did a live stream of the live stream just for fun, just to kind of do a live react. We'll just, now that it's settled, we'll do some thoughts on that. We'll actually talk about the 4th anniversary in game, the first impressions, expectations, things of that nature. And then we'll dive right into the new Jeume unit now that we have all the details of the kit. Oldoa as well, the new Guild War map that dropped today. Want to take a peek at that. Ashen King Mont is also huge news now that we got the details on him. And then we have 2 excellent Q&A questions from Woodstock Wins of the manual PvP, the winner of the manual tournament, about the overall game balance. And we thought this is more pertinent than ever now that we're seeing 2 keystone units really come into the fray. And we'll talk about the cost of units, this and that, and see where the night takes us. But for now, the 4th anniversary live stream recap that was back on Friday night that we did. A couple days to settle in. Did you enjoy that? How, what do you think?
I mean, I was excited for it, before I went into it, just because I knew that, potentially we're looking at a Jeume announcement, and, obviously anniversary time is, when they tend to be a little bit more grandiose with their gifts and things like that. So I'm fine with it. I'm not expecting like amazing production quality. At this point, I've been watching, streams with Hiroki for a good 7 or 8 years now. I mean, because I played FFBE for long before I joined Wotive. So I know what it's like, and I know what their song and dance is, and I appreciate it for what it is. I do think that it was a bit long-winded. I think that they went a little bit too long with the story section, and it was a little bit slow there, where I think there was some unscripted things happening that, when you add in the translation, and we talked about this on the live stream as well, when you add in that second layer of, kind of sitting around waiting for an explanation, it just ended up being way too long, and it kind of slowed everything down. I do think that like the actual information presented on the units was a little bit kind of not much and kind of glossed over and not hyped up enough, for, 2 big 100 cost units, anniversary time. There should have been a little bit more excitement and kind of, I don't know. So it was a little bit disappointing, but I don't think it was really that much different than stuff we've seen before.
Yeah, I'm completely in line with you. Like the expectations, we know what's going to happen. There are some production things that I think could be worked on. And there are things that aren't really new. To your point, the pacing gets difficult sometimes with the translator and waiting for that information. And so when you consider you wait like maybe a full minute for the whole question and then translation and Q&A, for what you get for actual info for like a minute of waiting, it's not very rewarding because there's really not a ton of information all the time. And obviously it can be kind of, I know they're working hard, but it can be kind of painful sometimes to hear the translation live in terms of really trying to focus on it. But besides that, I think the content, to your point, I agree. It seemed an odd time to focus on some of the Warrior of the Crystal units, where I know they were doing some significant backstory on them. We did get into the Ashen Warriors for a while, which I thought was nice. But again, maybe a cleaner way to relay that information. But overall, like, we knew what they're going to be, and people know what Justin's presentation style is like. They know Roki's communication style. So I was entertained. It went long for me, particularly because we're on the East Coast on a business night, or you know what I mean, like a Sunday or Friday night. Also, I guess Friday night wasn't so bad, but yeah, normally those aren't always on Friday. Sometimes they're on Sunday.
No, do you think that there's like a huge benefit to it being a live stream? Like, did you enjoy the information more when it was just presented in like an edited video?
No, nope. To me, a live stream really has the benefit of feeling like you're interacting with the person live. It's a connection where there's a more of a, I don't know how to say it, like you feel it when something's as scripted as what they have in terms of the questions. They obviously know their answers a little bit ahead of time. You really lose some of that like interaction directly with them because you're really not. You're watching them do something that's scripted to an extent. It's like you and me right now. If we were doing a scripted Q&A where I'm reading something and like people were live watching us, like you lose that element. So I think there's things that like probably could have not been live streamed and some things that certainly can be. But yeah. What about you?
I appreciated that the edited, like pre-recorded videos were more straightforward and to the point, and then there was less kind of lumbering around, so to say. I do also appreciate the live stream though for the interactivity. I would recommend that they take more advantage of that though to make it seem more special and hype it up a little more, get the audience more involved. Because there was long stretches where, like I said, we were kind of sitting through this backstory of the characters, and there was no kind of talking or chatting with the audience during that point, or holding the audience and stuff like that. I think they could have done a better job, kind of actually leveraging the live stream to maybe get us through some of those more long-winded moments.
The polls are a great point. That's probably one of the easiest ways because you can also control what people want, so you are able to like self filter some of the answers, if you know what I mean, for them if they're nervous about the way people respond to things. But yeah, we know what they're about. Thumbs up, I guess. But like, yeah, I'm not. It's not the best thing in the world.
Yeah.
But then we'll transition to the actual fourth anniversary in-game first impressions, which were delayed due to the emergency maintenance. And again, that was bridge wide, so not wood specific. So it's just really unlucky and unfortunate timing for that first impression. But what did you think logging into the game and kind of getting into things? What was your first impression of the anniversary so far?
So first of all, we're greeted with that beautiful artwork there on the login screen, which one of the better anniversary pictures I think that they've done in the history of the game.
Yep.
Really really pleasant to look at. So I appreciated that. Would have been nice maybe to see some more on the home screen. Again, that's something we kind of talked about in our state of the game video, where if you look at kind of the home screen, you wouldn't know that there's any anniversary going on. Like there's no fireworks in the background, there's no streamers or anything at all.
Yep.
So they could have done something there for certainly. In terms of like the special shop, I was pretty disappointed not seeing any. I get that we just got several pack H's for FF13, a few weeks ago. That's fine. I'm glad that we're getting those on a monthly cadence. But that monthly reset just seems standard to me at this point. They've done it many months now in a row. For the anniversary, we should have seen some special packs showing up today. Pack F, maybe this is the one time a year maybe that you want to do it, or even just a special anniversary pack. I was, severely disappointed not to see anything new at all in the special shop. The anniversary shop, actually, I thought it was pretty good. There was several, nice deals in there for both paid and free. The Transcendent Mind Spheres for 300 paid, I thought was a pretty fair deal. And then a 40 select shard that goes up through Elds for 500 free Visior, I think was an exceptional deal.
Yep.
for any player. So yeah, and there was a few other bundles in there that I thought were pretty nice values too.
Yeah, I
How
mean,
about you?
bundle perspective, I'm pretty happy with things overall in terms of what they offered. I completely agree on the paid thing, though. This flabbergasted us through World to Road Wide also, where I don't know, say this right now. If you're offering Jeume for 12K paid, you still have the normal paid tickets for like the pulls, like the 3K for two pulls. You have obviously all these new special deals for paid. They know the demand for these units. Two units that also have their own individual paid banners, which you might use. So the lack of actual access to acquire that currency other than just the regular $100, provided you already bought your pack H's, a couple weeks ago when they first dropped. Very not good, and that's just speaking from like the whale perspective. But I keep hearing it from people, and I completely agree with the average player. The fact that there isn't just a $7, $10, $20 pack right now is egregiously awful. It's a huge miss. There are hundreds of people, if not thousands, that would spend $20 right now for the fourth anniversary for a special pack. I don't know how or why the decision making misses that so egregiously. Um, yeah, but the shop deals again, they're fine, and I completely agree with the optics of it. That was one of my first things. I know they can only do so much because we're global and we basically get the recycled assets of JP. But yeah, to have some fireworks or a banner at the top of the screen or a special background or who knows what, we get it just doesn't feel like it. Which yeah,
I mean, to be fair, if I'm in JP right now, I'd be thinking the same thing. And if I think back to like past anniversaries, I don't think it's something that they've really done on other ones either. You know, thinking back to like the JP fourth anniversary a few months ago, I don't remember any special home screen there. So, I mean, how hard is it for them to like flip together a background and, have it, just use it during anniversary time? At least something is changing there to kind of give you a visual cue that something is going on.
right, right.
Um,
Which the game is so turned the wheel at this point, and standardized. I'm surprised they don't have the capability to just do something small like that. It's just adding in a couple assets to the game. Oh, one of my suggestions was like a unique anniversary item. They've done like producer's jacket, the bow tie, things like that. Some of those items are very helpful, some of them not. But you still like throw something kind of fun in there to again, it's just about the feel of it, and it doesn't feel like it. And that being said, also got to be realistic. This is like an Easter egg or a gift for them to us. We're not really global anymore. That was the whole point of Road to Worldwide. We are JP, but just a little delayed because of some operational things. So having any kind of high hopes for like a global anniversary really shouldn't be there in the first place because I think that was the whole point of Road to Worldwide is that there really isn't like a catered audience to global specifically. They do a couple small things for us here and there, but for the most part, they're not going out of the way to do much for global. That's kind of my pessimistic side, but I think it's the reality of it.
I can totally see that, but I mean, at the same time, this is the same things that are going on in JP at the moment as well. They're getting these similar things too. And if you want to retain, a seasoned player base, these little cues and nods and thank yous, frankly, for spending so much money on your game are certainly needed, to kind of retain that audience long term. So I would highly suggest that somebody think about that. And these aren't big asks that we're asking for. Asking for like paid bundles that you're actually going to pump money into the game for. That's not a big ask. That is asking for ways to give you money. So
Right.
somebody needs to think about that. I think for the long term health of the game. In terms of like not the bundles, but the summons. Great. We got the 100 summons with 10 URs. I get that it's disappointing if you don't exactly get something that you needed. That's never going to be a guaranteed. I'm sure some people did, but either way, it's nice to have free summons, and we got a lot more coming. So I do appreciate that. The actual banners themselves for Jeume and like that paid pack for 12K. We got to get into that one next. I
We're
think.
going to
What
talk
what
about that
was
one. Yeah, we'll digest that. Actually, just two quick things. I will say the one thing I'm not upset about. I'm not upset. The lack of any kind of select ticket. That was a huge swing and miss for me. Of all times to drop a select ticket, anniversary seems like a key one. Where this is an opportunity for some people to play some catch up. The last one we really got was like the JP anniversary, which was significant amount of months ago. That we have not had a vision card select ticket since then. The unit select I think about the same, and so we're not asking for like the world, but one. Do you know what I mean? And you can still make it a paid option. I'm not saying a free, but the idea that like you can have that opportunity, it's not being there, feels not great. And the last thing I was going to mention, everyone memes about it. EOS end of series. This is not that conversation, but these little things like the optics of like adding in some assets and equipment and stuff, it shows that the team is still like dynamic and investing a little bit above and beyond. It's when you don't get that investment, that's where you feed the flames of like, oh, they're just like milking us before it's over. But if they do some of these small things, you can point to that as evidence and be like, no, like someone is still like doing something out of the ordinary. They are being a little dynamic. They are bucking expectations. It's a signaling to the fan base that it's not just rinse and repeat. There is some actual thought still being invested into the game. So I will say that strategically.
Yeah, 100% agreed on that point. Like I said, little nods, little thank yous to the players. They don't go unnoticed. So, I think that I will say that, Gumi has or Square has traditionally extended, during these anniversary times over several weeks, the kind of handouts and freebies and even the paid deals and things like that. So I don't want to completely hammer them just yet because, there are several more weeks of this celebration that are still to come. Let's let those 3 weeks happen or 4 weeks, whatever it ends up being, and then let's judge it at the end. Maybe they have more plans that they're going to fill in some of these gaps, but I really don't think it was a good. I mean, I shouldn't say it wasn't good, but it wasn't a great first step forward. It does feel like there is a little bit lacking there for
Yeah,
sure.
I'm so glad you said that just before we move on because I feel like that happened with the Road to Worldwide the first week. It unfurled and we were kind of like, what? This was it after all? And then the second week came and I think they like blew us away with some of the stuff they done. I remember being like shocked in the second week and the third week of Road to Worldwide when it went live, not the announcement, when it actually went live, that it like continued for a couple of weeks. And I remember it got like iteratively better. And I remember like my foot in my mouth being like, wait a minute, like we kind of jumped the gun a little bit here off of 1 week of data. So hopefully that's the case again here.
Then it really fell off the rails, I think, in the third week and beyond, when our president was like the 10 shards showing up in the shop. So,
No, I mean like in November when it went live, like when we officially, not the
oh,
announcement leading up to
oh, I
it,
thought you meant the actual Road to Worldwide. You're talking about post Road to
post
Worldwide.
like when we actually synced up and they're like, all right,
Yeah,
guys, we're done. They had the live stream like it's over, it's done, and then they had like 2 or 3 weeks celebrating it, and it was very
yeah,
good. They actually did a lot of good things at that time. Yeah.
yeah.
But
Agreed.
yeah, so we'll move on to the Jeume thoughts and analyses. We know the everything about her now, the stats, which we'll talk about, the kit, everything. But we'll talk about the acquisition style, where there was an option here for 12K paid to acquire the unit flat out, and I think there was shards included in that, if I recall, and maybe not. I don't know the exact details of it, but obviously, kind of piggybacking off what they've done recently with the 70 cost Warrior of the Crystals. What do you think about the strategy here for the 12K paid?
Kind of going into it, I honestly I didn't expect 6K paid for 100 cost units. If it happened, I would have been blown away. That was kind of how I felt about it. Honestly, I expected maybe 10K because that is kind of the bar that it's been set in the past for. We've seen it on select 100. You get a full 120 built unit for 10K. Obviously, not a brand new unit, but I mean, you can think back over the course of the game. The game initially launched, during Final Fantasy Tactics with Ramza for a 6K paid. Later on, we got Dwayne for just a $50 buy here in Global. Those were, great units when they were first released, especially Dwayne. That was a 100 cost unit for $50. You think about Jeume coming in for 12K. Even if you were able to take advantages of pack H's, maybe you didn't, use them right away for Final Fantasy 13, still $100 for a unit. And, I know you
200. Oh no, 100. You're right. Packages. Yeah.
100 with the packages, 200 if you don't have them. So yeah, that is very steep to me, even if you do get some shards in there. So I wasn't willing to support that. I'm glad that, I had plenty of free viz stocked up. So, that's what I used for.
Yeah. So let me make this abundantly clear. I hope this is not the new normal going forward. I hope they don't do this all the time. That being
Don't
said,
support it.
no, that I didn't. I wasn't going to. That being said, if this is like a very special, hey, this is the unit Global voted for, so we're gonna do a special bundle, particularly for the whales. I actually don't hate it for a couple of reasons. Number one, those of you that need to understand how whales operate, they pull everything, which means your viz stash is virtually at zero. Let's say all the time, right? So if you were at 5 or 10k viz, not nearly enough to consider pitying this unit, which we'll say, can be up to 42k, but can be a little bit less. Let's just throw 40k out as a nice round number for a pity. If you're at like 5k viz, in order to acquire 40k viz, you need to buy three $100 packs in the shop. That's $300. You get 36k viz. It's not all free viz either. And then you can start pulling on the banner. So by allowing to pull her for 12k paid, you lock in her price as a trade-off for the downside of having to pity her and having to spend a lot extra. So from a whale perspective, it's technically a bargain. Why I don't mind it is because she's a permanent pool unit, number one. It's a key caveat. And number two, it's not more expensive for the non-paying members. And I'm going to use this as the example of the 70 cost Warrior of the Crystals. Their banners were far more expensive than the average 70 cost unit. So for players not paying, they got boned hard on not getting that unit for a price that a 70 cost unit should be. It allowed whales to buy that unit straight out for the 6k paid. And the added thing there for how they bone the more casual players is that the Warrior of the Crystal or Ashen Warrior units, they recur, but they're not permanent pool. So you don't get their shards and select tickets as easily, and they don't drop as frequently, and they're not random pulls throughout the year, and they're not on the guild summons throughout the year. So they were disproportionately hurt by that pack, but this one they're not. Whales get the optionality of buying her for cheap. Regular players get to pull her like she's regular any old unit. Nothing has changed whatsoever. So because it's a nice happy medium, I'm comfortable with this, but I hope it's not the norm.
I'm with you mostly. I wouldn't say that it's pulling her for cheap though. I would say that the 3-to-1 like paid to free value is like standard. So I would say it's like if you're coming in with 0 viz and you're a whale, 12k, sure. Maybe
Right.
there's times in the past where I may have considered it as well. I just really don't want this to be the normal, so I didn't want to put my stamp of approval on it and decided not to buy it.
Yep.
I think that if it was a 10k value, or even if it was 12k and the unit was fully built for me, at that point I don't need to buy shards unless I want to reincarnate. Then I feel a lot better about 12k at that point. With just 200 shards, for similar same pack that we just got the 70 cost units for, I don't think so. I don't think it's worth double at that point. No
No,
way.
no. Particularly because we just mentioned there's all these other paid things in the shop to potentially acquire that if you're already buying that much for the unit, now it's maybe for these shop deals and they're not giving us any extra paid packs to compensate for it. It makes for a very difficult thing to approve of.
I like when they have the 25% like extra chance banners. So I like that Jeume had that. So I was willing to roll the dice on that one, and thankfully I was able to cash in on one of those boosted chances. So
Me too. But let's ask a more important question. Was she worth the 12k bundle? Let's actually talk about Jeume herself as a unit. Where do we even start? I've done my character review. I'm editing it right now. We've both digested and hashed her out in Discord already. What's the first impression here for you for Jeume and what you've seen?
as soon as the data was out, I kind of dived in and started building and looking at the stats, putting it into my database, and just comparing it like I always do when a new unit comes out, and just being completely blown away by the statistical power creep that we've never seen it. We've never seen this ever,
Yeah.
and it was specifically with her and Mont, which we'll talk about him later, but both of those units are setting new standards. Maybe we don't know yet, but it looks that way. New bar at least for stats in the game
Yeah.
across the board, really.
Grossly higher. And I do a lot of stat analysis to start my presentation off. I'll be honest, most of those stats don't have a strong correlation with how a unit ends up performing. The stats are really there to like help you know how to build them, where some of the strengths and weaknesses are. But characters are usually dictated by how good their kit is, how strong the abilities are. The stats are a function of it, but very rarely is there a steep correlation. But these stats that they have, the effective HP, the actual HP, the attack stat, her base agility being those few points higher, the passives. I mean, I want to get into the passives. Stay on stats. The luck stat that they've given her, the dexterity stat for the accuracy too, is materially much higher. That it does affect gameplay balance. It's not always the case with a lot of those stats.
Yeah, I was just about to say you could say that in the past because the margins between units were relatively standard, and there had been like, a steady, very kind of slow incline in certain stats, like HP, for example, if you look over the years, has always trended up.
Yep.
Agility, for the most part, has been trending up. But they had kind of a cap as well. You didn't expect some unit to come in and suddenly be 2K higher, in HP than somebody else. You looked at like units from the first year, like Engelbert has still kind of, top of the HP charts, and Nivlu still kind of top of the agility charts. But these two units are coming in, and they're kind of right in the top 10, if not leading the stats in many different categories, which we never see.
No, it's yeah, and then not even talking about the kit itself. I mean, there's so much here. Now it's not without weaknesses. This is a unit who is a meta defining unit. She's going to move the needle, as will Ashen King Mont, who we'll talk about soon. But there's so much here in terms of just some of the innate resistances. Like I mentioned, this slashing magic res makes it so she's not able to get to zero very easily in terms of her imperils. That 38% imperil will likely not put her negative with any kind of debuff weakening. The passive ability here, they doubled up on the defense pen and the slash res pen. You still can get her to another 80 defense pen. The agility of 12% is there. The accuracy passive is there. There's so much in the kit here too. Like, I mean, bro, like the buff, like let's be real. The amount of things that it does here for you get the amount the haste here, and even the 120 ability is exceptionally strong. Where there's just so many attributes to it.
Going back to like the stats for a moment, I was thinking about it, and kind of my take on this is that we've had kind of a steady ability power creep happening since the I mean, even before the third anniversary, it was happening, but it kind of went into overdrive in the third anniversary with certain stats, like notably like area resistance, unit resistance, and then even a bunch of like the buffs and things really started getting overblown. You think like the first kind of big book buff was Alaya, having a ton of different lines and aspects to it,
Yeah.
and it just kind of continued on from there with new auras and new effects as well, kind of being peppered in there. But there have been a number of characters, even despite getting those things, that have just come in and flopped. And it's because, and when those characters come in and they're designed to kind of counteract certain metas, counteract characters that have been kind of sitting around and creating a stale meta, that is bad for Gumi because they're not making money on that unit because it comes in and has a bad first impression. People don't pull for it. But then secondly, it's bad for the players because there's no change, there's no dynamics happening in the meta. That's happened to a number of characters throughout 2023. You think about like the Reagans, the Sterns, the Howlets, really kind of came in and maybe they had some uses later or in certain teams or in niche use, but they didn't really have the effect on the game that I think that Gumi putting all that work into it really wanted. And the real reason for that is that there were certain units that players identified, based on their kits or their abilities, that they invested resources into scrolls and really pumped up their stats. And I think that the base stats being so homogenous really ended up creating a problem for them over time. And I think that this is kind of part of they finally have kind of realized that that has been a big part of the issue. And I think that they've just kind of come in and given them a built-in reincarnation with Mont and Jeume specifically. And I think we're going to maybe see that going forward. And then that kind of differentiates them from this last year of units a little bit.
It will definitely differentiate it from the last year units, but I don't think it'll differentiate them from all the future new units because you still have reincarnations. So you're right, you'll have
Yeah.
all these extra base stats built in, but you can now reincarnate Jeume and easily get her to 16,000 HP with that reincarnation. Like that's a level that everyone will still have access to. And yeah, we're still on the edge of our seat waiting to see if this is the new normal or being frank, it could just be this is the unit who won the poll, so they made her busted for fans. And Ashen King Mont, we knew was going to be a setting the bar. So he's kind of in expectations. He's the big bad. So maybe they just went above and beyond to give him the stats to back it up. My guess is, I mean, let's be real, it's a gotcha game. This is the new norm. But that being said, it really could just be like two one-offs that these are two kind of special cases of characters that Gumi went a little hard on. But yeah, see what happens.
I mean, traditionally on these kind of half year anniversaries, these kind of special units, they have had the intentions of kind of setting up new metas with them. And that is very much seems to be what's happening here. They're creating two new problems in the game, or at least something that is going to have meta impact and change things around and make it a bit more dynamic, as I was saying. So, we'll just have to wait and see what the trends are gonna be over the coming months. But yeah, it's definitely it was a whopper kind of seeing those stats the
It
other day.
was. It was. And we'll obviously talk more about Jeume next week once we have like a full week of Guild War data on her. We've done minimal tinkering, if any, at all today. Obviously, we didn't have much time. But, we have our own character reviews. I'm sure that'll be coming out and who knows what. But we'll go to Oldoa for now, who is the new tank added to the game. And she is another one that people have been drooling over for a lot of reasons. Very, very strong answer to the current strike meta that we're seeing. Very, very strong. Just tank overall to add another physical aura into the game. Obviously, bringing ice back into some kind of form just from a foundational perspective. A2 has been exceptional. There are other exceptional ice units, but Snow has fallen back. Friavy has fallen back. This is another staple that can come in here, particularly for her class being the staff black mage, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Black Mage.
Staff Black Mage, it always screws me up because she's got the devout sub job. As a Staff Black Mage unit where that already was a strong meta, and so this is again like a new factor that plays into it. We'll go over some recordings soon, but what do you think about Oldoa at the moment?
I love the flexibility. Like you have the ice angle, obviously mono element is good with A2, and you could throw Velis or Howlet beside her. That's going to be a really nice team. You have the ice water angle, of course, with the Dark Esper cards. You could bring in your Ferrises, your Elds, etc. So that's all nice, but the Black Mage angle obviously has been one of the more powerful teams over in JP, at least until Mont arrived. And we've seen it for a while now that Vivi and Helena. I think that Helena really is the cog there, behind Aldoa. Vivi maybe can get traded in or out, and maybe you can put in another piece, or you could use him. He's still good if you've invested into him. But that Black Mage team, it does have several different other groups that it mixes very well with. You think about katanas. You could think about maybe going double tank with Dario, get both auras going on at the same time. You could think about maybe bringing in Greatsword. Black Mage mixes pretty well with Greatsword or Warrior as well. So there's a lot of different angles that you could play with there. In terms of team compositions. That's kind of one thing that I really do like about Aldo is that flexibility.
I would agree. I'm people are probably seeing my screen, my face a little perplexed at the moment. I'm very intrigued of this sudden random uptick in fire on defense in top 10 JP. Where I don't know what would have changed to have caused that this week as opposed to like the couple weeks prior. Very interesting. But yeah,
I think that's just Volk coming into the game there. Yeah, the fire got an uptick to kind of because it with Volk at the helm and with Shawls, it does work pretty well against that particular team.
that's fair. I thought Volk came out a little earlier than this, but no, you're right. The timing matches up. But
It's only been a couple weeks for him.
I know. But no, she is a stellar unit. Obviously, I will talk more about her in our own reviews and whatnot. But I know we have two replays that we can show just how stellar she is. So yeah, JB, any context you want to add around what you made for this team and who you're hitting here, or like what kind of team you're attacking?
Yeah, so just to kind of set the table, I was so verklempt about having to pity the unit that I just decided to dump the rest of my Visior into shards and build the unit up on day one. And pump all those resources that I've been sitting on. So anyway, I was able to get them ready, and we've been seeing a lot of strike in the top 10, a lot of strike walls. So I was definitely itching to see what Aldoa can do. That's really her bread and butter. So I put together Jeume A2 and Aldoa, kind of that ice water mix. Got some of the Greatsword and Black Mage synergy as well. I pulled in some of those cards, and I didn't have a ton of time to test it. Like I was, kind of in the last moments before Guild War locked. I was building up the faith and bravery and trying to set what toggles looked obvious, but I didn't get a ton of time to test it and just kind of threw it out there. And this was the result here today.
I love it, and yeah, this is a pretty maybe not a standard strike team because it's the Perrine iteration rather than the Ketone, but it's still a high level strike team. Obviously, a lot of room for Perrine to potentially be reincarnated, just given her age and what the game has done to make it accessible for people. And so yeah, I'll just hit play here. We'll kind of analyze live and see how it goes.
Yeah, so I got kind of a standard setup here with Oldoa in the middle, picking up both buffs. Neither of those buffs for either of them repeat, which is nice, so you don't have to worry about kind of toggling the AI like we do with some units and kind of setting the positions. This map is kind of short across, so there's not a ton of time for the tank to actually get off the second buff, which in Oldoa's case, it didn't end up mattering.
Right. A2's got the accuracy to hit.
So does Jeume.
The health regen there is nice. Oh my god. The barrier coming in clutch.
So one thing I did do with Jeume is I'm using that fighting spirit reaction ability, which is just a flat heal. And you know, it's a relatively low chance to proc at 20%, but even if it just goes off one time in the battle, you know that's a pretty nice value add with her HP pool. So
oh my god,
not a ton of damage from Oldoa, but you know, just not having to worry about the CT down is so massive against this strike team. Like they live, you know, they've been living such a charmed life with, you know, not only Alaya getting it with the stag impact, but you know, then 2P coming in and having it as well. You know, taking that away is, you know, it's immense.
It's an absolute game changer. Alaya, you know, while her 3-direction jamming thrust, you know, stag impact is very strong. What makes her strong is the CT down. The lapping of turn order really is what kills a lot of teams' competitive advantage in either breaking up a chain for the chain damage or maybe just getting off one extra turn to get some chip damage in and bring in a courage or who knows what. But yeah, that's a significant, obviously the physical aura being a massive factor in that as well. But we will look at a second replay too. And I know these kind of go fast, but I think still get the point across. This is
Before we get into that though, I just want one point on, you know, many players out there might have Summer Glassy, you know, who also is an aura tank, and you know, she obviously is giving you that same benefit of the 40% physical reduction. This is the big value add for Oldoa, is that CT down manipulation taken away, but also she's not water, obviously. So going into Alaya, she's one of the main damage dealers for that strike team. You know, not getting your main tank nuked in 2 or 3 hits is kind of another differentiation point that kind of sets Oldoa apart there.
Yeah, definitely. And this is a similar team. It's the Perrine iteration that we're seeing, but yeah, we'll see a second hit. I'm sure the movement will be similar, but we'll still see how it ends up shaking out. And yeah, I'll press play.
So I wasn't sure if this one would go as smoothly, just because I know Oldoa is only getting the 1 buff, and you know she's at relatively low health here. So we'll see what happens.
You know, with second attack in Guild War, all you need to do is clear. So even if she does the job for a couple hits, let the other 2 clean up.
Yeah. She does have that remove re-raise as well. Obviously, it's not great against this particular team, but definitely another nice benefit to her aura.
Yep.
You can see the heal backs coming in there, clutch.
The self-sustain of this team is fantastic.
Jeume's back to full.
The healing power down is going to be a must for the next like month.
You can see there Jeume holding up really well with the damage aura against Alaya, even despite the, you know,
the water element versus
elemental disadvantage. Yep.
Gonna show me a good time. Is that all?
Ooh.
Get the charm. She's still able to hit me though with her counter.
Yep.
Even when she's charmed.
It's amazing. I mean, pretty solidly clean. 6-star day for you with relatively little tuning. Your A2 is max reincarnated, so there's some extra power creep there. But yeah, 2 out of the box units, slap them together, and that is a formidable team to fight against. Figured it'd be fun. I know it went by quick, so maybe not able to see all those buffs and digest what's happening, but obviously you could pause and watch the video for the viewers. But very happy with her introduction to the game.
I mean, that's what you're looking for when you pull a new unit. You want it to come in and have immediate results, immediate impact. Hasn't always been the case with the, units over the past year. Obviously, there have been many that have, like Alaya, like Soul, like A2, kind of those defining units. And this is a couple units that we don't know yet if they're going to be defining. They may very well be, but they certainly have that potential. Immediate results is great.
I'm really glad you brought that up. That's actually something that for a while in my character reviews I struggled with, where I'd give a final grade, and it was so tough to not be a prisoner of the moment and give a grade and not see that reflected immediately that I like introduced a grade, game disruption, because I needed to make it abundantly clear there are some units that come in have high impact or maybe low impact game disruption, but that shouldn't affect the overall evaluation of their character. We've done that so often throughout the history of the game, where been prisoners of the moment, and lo and behold, like 8 months down the road, all of a sudden the Howl at the Heavens Blade looks broken out of nowhere, and everyone's like, "How did this unit sleep for so long?" And it's because the answer is like, well, he came in at a bad time, but the valuation of the character is still good. Jeume, though, is both game disruption and high quality for sure. Same with Oldoa.
Very cool that they both work together as well. And they're, we've already had kind of some cards that connect Black Mage and Greatsword. And Oldoa's card is going to be another one that's going to be coming in next week that does kind of extend that connection even further.
Yep, totally. And we were going to go over the Guild War map. I would say, though, in the interest of time, we'll circle back on that. Everyone's still digesting it anyway. We haven't done extensive testing, but we'll
get a little bit of a look at it there in the replays anyway.
Yeah, exactly. But because we do want to still cover Ashen King Mont, who got released, and yeah, I mean, I'll just preface this. It's the same argument stat wise. He sets the bar so much higher than any other damage dealer, regardless of the kit itself, which does have some significant uniqueness, some very strong abilities for where the game is trended balance wise. There's some things in terms of like his silencing ability that adds some very interesting interactions with a lot of these magic scaling units, and it's not just the DPS, it is the tanks. Volk's a magic scaling tank, Oldoa's a magic scaling tank, Dario's a magic scaling tank. Like there's a lot of them that have silence is debilitating. So there's a huge shift for what he introduces. He's the first unit to have a unit resistance crush, and his place in the warrior class with the Lucio, a new Lucio, or Nucio as we call him, Bart's, a couple other warriors. He looks to be setting up a lot of good things here. As an Earth unit too, nice to kind of have a new face of Earth if you go that direction.
He's in the Knight class, but
Knight,
they do connect very well with warrior. They were several of their cards work in tandem, so I 100% agree. He's got kind of that X factor with the status effects. He has the sleep that he can get as long as it's an enhanced chance as long as his region or his AP region is online. And then he also has a sleep on his unique counter, which I thought was interesting. It's the damage happens and then he puts them to sleep, which is super, super cool. It's a 35% chance too, so it's not something that you can fully cover with a Trust Stone.
Yep.
So it does look like, with the multiple status effects, this is going to be, maybe a unit you're running at higher faith. He's tanky enough that, he can afford to do that. Like you said, his HP off the charts, like tank tier HP, at least from what we're used to so far. The accuracy is, I think he is the most accurate unit in the game if we kind of judge him against current units. If you kind of utilize, he has multiple passives in there. So he does have some accuracy on his board nodes as well, which we don't think we've ever seen.
No, very odd that they added in. I think he's like third or fourth. He's right there. I think Rugia is technically the highest, but Ashen King Mont is like a couple percentage points. He's top. It's amazing.
I mean, and then like the high luck that he has, the high agility, and you think about like the cards that he has access to within the Knight class with that Halloween card for the 42% luck. He's part of Earth, which has all those evasion tools. So this is going to be like a very high tier evasion unit that's sitting with like 15,000 HP, which is very, very scary to think about.
His evasion can't be understated enough. It's actually like You have to gear for it. And to be fair, Jeume can fall in that category too. She's
Yeah.
like on the gradient of what's acceptable for evasion, higher than I think many of the light units that we're accustomed to seeing in terms of like that like pseudo evade. She's at minimum right there with them. But but yeah, King Mon is a step above, and that is not something I
Just
think
because of the card support is what really transcends him. Yeah.
absolutely. It's going to be a fun problem to solve.
Then he's got all that healing as well. Like we saw Jeume's healing there. He's got a bunch of it as well. He's got an auto heal back on his passive. He that unit crush, that's something that we've been waiting for a while. I mean, obviously we've seen a bunch of characters come through with the area version. He's the first one to get that 60% unit crush. And when you think about that Black Mage team in particular, Helena and Vivi and Oldoa both get crazy amounts of unit resistance, especially Oldoa and Helena. You can get them up into the 70s or higher, depending on your build. So he does have like that wide area resistance too of 35% against diamond AoEs. Really, really crazy unit. I did notice on one of his attacks that's his AoE attack there can dispel follow-ups as well, which I thought something that we really haven't seen very many units. Like we've seen it on Sodali and Comral, and that's it.
This is huge, huge for the Strike meta too. Strike is dead, and if not next week, a couple weeks from now.
So yeah, a lot to like with this character. I think he's going to definitely be a meta definer. It's looking like at the moment.
I'd agree with that. Looking at that limit break too, you just brought that up. The unit in peril flat 20%, not just the crush, but just 20%. Also has a follow up attack here where this benefit is his own follow up, which obviously we've seen that be great like courage counter, and you can't seal that naturally. So if you can seal courage, that's not going to work against him. It's also the haste to self, and yeah, another select two on a moderate 4 square range. Typeless damage is hugely kind of awesome. Just to bypass into those resistances, and yeah, 240% mod is a nice creep up for what we're used to seeing for limit breaks.
And his follow up is not like the 50% damage follow up that we've been seeing on all
Oh,
the recent units like Bart's and 2P and all these guys.
it's
He
the
has like the
86.
original Astrius like follow up of 86%, hits him much, much harder.
It's exceptional. With the unit res crush, that's going to nuke some people. You're not going to be ready
Oh
for it.
yeah.
But that brings us now to our like Q&A section, which is I think a healthy balanced discussion. Certainly topical given the introduction of these two units. This is brought to us by Woodstock Wins, again the manual PvP winner, and really analytical game player too. So I think this is a really good Q&A that he and I had kind of gone back, but I want to share with everyone here too. So forgive us for the moments we cover our faces. This is a debate that he had going on internal with his guild about the game's current balance. And he had one side saying that the game is not balanced because of how Fist and Magic dominate the meta. We're getting another Fist unit, the Veritas of the Earth. Ashen Mont is on the other side, I guess here, an OP Knight or Earth unit. But, sorry, 1 second. Okay. But the other side of the argument is saying that really any element is playable at a reasonably high level. And you could pick from really any job class, except for a select few, which we've acknowledged are a little bit behind the curve. He did some basic analysis here in terms of like the top 10 units to see how many elements they came from. And it seems like the top 10 units through 2024 so far touched 7 different elements. Previous years was really only 5. And he's using the top 10 to 20 ranked guilds for this. He wanted us to bring this up for game balance. Do we think the game is in balance at the moment? Or are we kind of in these hard stuck metas and the game is very much unbalanced between Strike and Black Mage?
I mean, it's certainly debatable. I mean, my perception of it was that, we've had several meta resets, like almost complete resets that have happened since the third anniversary. The first of being, just the third anniversary itself when we had Seth and Yuffie, and then the Full Metal Alchemist crew come in. That was our meta for a while, pretty much until until Elia showed up, and that really was the next game. Elia and Soul and kind of that unit resist meta was the thing for a while. Then we transitioned into kind of another meta reset, and we had the Black Mages come through, and that was only just a few months ago, and it seems like we're kind of gearing up for another one with Jeume and now King Mont or Ashen Monts. It seems like every few months now we're kind of getting almost like a hard, force change onto the meta. Is it that much different than what we've seen in the past? A little bit, because I think that the problem with this recent power creep is that almost the entirety of the old cast is completely out of the picture. They're just unplayable against these new units. And in the past, there was times where you could bring some of those older units back for pockets and, as solutions maybe to some of the newer units that had come out. And I just don't see that as a possibility right now if they're not, within like the last 9 to 12 months.
I think that's fair. I think my short answer is that I do think the game is in excellent balance at the moment. I'm going to share the screen just for a second here. This is basically year to date, January to March. It's a top 15 guilds, and I'm looking at offense. I think that's really important when you look at this analysis because defense is skewed by the fact that guilds wall and coordinate based off schedule. So a lot of the stats that you see on defense don't always reflect true game balance. It's really a reflection of like how the top end of the game works. But yeah, if you're looking at like overall like colors and how things are converging and the disparity of how high some of the utilization was, I would say the game is far more balanced, literally current day today, than it was at any point in the last 3 months year to date so far. And to me, my concept of balance is simply that you have a team that's super, super strong, maybe a couple of them, but there's always counterplay to what it is. To me, when a game is unbalanced, is when there's a de facto best, and you either do the best or you lose. And so I think of like Starlight Helena meta, where she was either like Light Vade or you lose, or even like Alaya when she first came in. It was really just like you either go strike or you lose, and there's not a lot of counterplay for what exists. But we're seeing that there is, and I mentioned the kind of downside. The fact of the matter is that we're in a gotcha game. Most people aren't pulling for everything, and so I don't think they realize that the game does have elements in here and characters and vision cards that affect game balance from a objective analytical perspective. But if you don't have them on your account, then you are kind of locking yourself out from maybe competing in certain aspects as the game changes. I can't tell you how many times we recommend a team for someone and they're like, "Oh, I don't have 3 of those vision cards," and it's like, well, I'm sorry, like then you're missing out. But that obviously I think is a factor in this, where there are units that people pass on or vision cards or espers. I remember we were doing a recommendation for someone and they'd been missing. It was either like Dark Odin or Dark Siren, and the answer was like, well, you have to have that, and that's part of the game balance. And so I think that's part of it too, where people don't pull for everything, don't have everything, and so they're not recognizing the fact that there are options and alternatives to these meta teams.
I think that I would rebut on that Black Mage team. I don't think that there was a solution for that until, at least several weeks later, until Nier came in and kind of opened things up. That was something that, guilds felt comfortable walling daily for several weeks in a row. Were there teams that could beat it? Yes, but there was some reliability issues, and obviously there was, water was not an element that a lot of people had access to during that time.
Right. Actually, no. Can I follow up to your point? I agree that that was. I don't disagree that that was a strong meta with no counterplay. Today, it's not anymore. But there was a time. Yeah. Believe it or not, there were some solutions. We did do some podcasts where we found competitive teams and we did crack the code. We had a water team that was sixing that team every single day. But to your point on water, that's people that passed on Summer Glassy. They passed on Ferris. They passed on Sildra. They passed on certain Luck Vision cards. So, like, the fact that they don't have these in their kit, you're right. They're not going to be able to do what we did, but that doesn't mean that the game isn't balanced. It means that you passed on things you maybe shouldn't have for what was required. And so that's the underlying nature of the gotcha game, too.
Yeah, I feel like that in the past it hadn't been so rigid in what you needed to counter like the top teams, and I feel like that's a product of the power creep that we've seen over the last year, where the characters and abilities are so strong that those niche characters that we might pull from the first couple years just have no place in the game. So it's really cut down, people's availability to go back to the well and find those things significantly.
I agree with that. I'm not saying pull units 2 years old, but there were a lot of units that people passed on the way to Road to Worldwide that ended up being very important in the current state of the game. Same with Vision Cards and Espers. And to your point on like the investment side, I remember someone had rebutted me. They were talking about water and like, oh, yeah, sure, you guys like reincarnated your Eld. And my counterpoint was like, yeah, but we're talking about Elias and Helenas who are max reincarnated. Like, why are we giving them the benefit of being reincarnated, but you can't hold water units in that same conversation of worthiness. We've proven that young Eld and Summer Glassy at max reincarnation are monsters and counter this meta. So it's like it's one of those things I think people just it's a
They
bias.
the answer is because they didn't do it, so
Right.
they haven't seen it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But where are we going with this? Oh, but yeah, I think the long and short of it is the game right now, I think, is balanced. It's likely to become a little imbalanced in the next month or two as Ashen Mont comes out. But again, that's going to be a reflection of pulling or not pulling, I think. And that's kind of the nature of the gacha.
Yeah, I mean, at least in some of the early footage I've seen from JP, I've seen Mont doing significant damage to a mono win team with recent units like Dario and Veritas of the Heavens. So that is a little bit concerning. 'Cause it's not like
Yeah,
we're talking about units that are a year old. Those units are just a few months old.
I know. I
Those
know.
those are wins top of the line units.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah, that's not something like to say. I know Bradley did something similar when he came out. He was crushing some of the wind units. But there is a small follow up to this, too, on the topic of balances. I think is worth exploring. That would you have preferred us in the fourth anniversary now certain units like Spring Jeume and Ashen King to be something like a cost 110 instead of being lumped in with fourth anniversary 100 cost units? And what can the devs do to rebalance some of these older units? Is it a actual cost adjustment? Is it something to buff their kits themselves? I think it's a valid question, and we even like asked this question when Elia came out. There were certain units that were head and shoulders above, and Kayshawn and the WDL League, we acknowledge that and we rebalance costs specifically for that. Is this the time and place and junction where we reevaluate unit costs or how they can compensate some of these older 100 cost units?
In terms of the cost thing, it's like it's a constant job, and I just I don't trust them to devote the time and dedication that's needed to maintain it, because it would be something that would need to be reviewed, basically every month. What's changed, what new units are, who's floating up, who's floating down, kind of like the tier list that we do. It's constantly evolving and changing, depending on what's going on. So it's tough though, because you look back to some of those old units and you want to find uses for them. And we've talked about it. There's just not enough opportunities in the game to kind of go back to them. One thing that I have though thought about, to me, like one of the biggest losers of time in this game has been the 80 cost units, where they cost just a little bit too much to kind of fit into some of these cost structures, and but the power isn't even commensurate like with the 70 cost units that are even being released now. So one thing that I thought might be interesting is just give them a cheaper or even a free reincarnation, to maybe those stats can kind of help bump them up and be a bit more competitive in some situations, or at least be a little bit more fun, that you could at least try them out and maybe see what they could do. But like investing those same resources and 1600 mind spheres and fragments and all these things into those 80 costs and these old units, it's just a labor of love at that point, that you're not really doing it for any sort of PvP reason at that point.
Yep. Totally, totally. No, I generally agree with you. You know what? I'm not averse to the idea of taking some of the older 100 costs and making them 90. I really don't think that adjustment is going to upset any game balance. And I think you could pretty clearly draw a decent line in the sand of which units, like, this is the cutoff. Sorry, guys. If they didn't make it, we're doing something better than nothing. But to me, the factor of cost really only impacts two things in this game. It factors number one, the cost limited content, which is few and far between. Being real, it's just limited Guild War, and even then, it's not always cost related. Sometimes it's vision card, as we saw, like vision card costs, not always unit. And then number two, on pull rates for banners. So for these older 100 cost units, because you're not pulling them on banners anymore, the drop rate is maybe they could fix the drop rate on some of them, and that's the kind of angle you take it. Like obviously they have like a lower drop rate than a permanent pool 80 cost or 90 cost unit. So maybe that's the angle you go at it, because I don't really see a benefit other than the cost content where reducing the cost would do anything for those units. They're not being played now. That's really the only place they'd be played. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's enough to rebalance them. They're not going to be good anyway, even if you lower the cost by 10. You know what I mean?
And it's again, we're a situation where the current power creep is really exacerbating the issue as well. Where, like he's considering there, are these units 110? Are they 120? When you kind of compare them against those old units, I would say certainly. And I also have a manual PvP league that I run where, just like Kason and some of these other leagues, I have set my own values for these units, and some of them have gone up to 120, 130. So I think it's only fair when you kind of consider the abilities, the stats, and all that kind of towards these older units. So would it be better for the game? I think so. It's just like I said, I'm just not sure that Gumi is going to be putting in that time and dedication because there's really no value in it. For them,
You know,
they've already sold those units to us.
ironically, now that I see the full list, it's not as big as I would have thought in terms of who I'd rework to 90. The Crystal Warrior units for the most part here, I think are still worth the 100 cost. Or not all of them are. Some of these units just blow, but I don't think 90 cost is gonna change their value in anything in particular, except that once in a while Guild War thing. But it's really like some of these year one ish units where like Dwayne at 100, Helen of the Black Robe, Ibarra, Oberyn, like those are kind of tough 100 cost units for me. They seem like good 90 ones, but as you kind of scroll up, like most of these are still relatively competitive at 100 cost.
But I mean, compared to which 100 costs, like
Right.
for like the last 6 months,
Yeah,
yeah, I would
no,
agree
no.
with you, but
Yeah.
not anymore.
Right, no,
Now they're
no.
all terrible.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think you fix it. And you know what? At this point, I think that's where you just get creative with the rules of limited Guild War. Is that you do something to intentionally shake up the meta, rather than just the cost restriction. Like if you want to make strike not a thing, you put in rules against strike. You don't limit the cost so that you can't make a triple strike team. Do you know what I mean? I think that's where the rules are really important.
I think that in the past they did a much better job with updating the old units to be more competitive with the current metas. And it's again with the current power creep, especially within the last 6 months, like pretty much since Alaya, the upgrades just haven't been enough to pull these characters back into the conversation. Where in the past, those MA2 upgrades, the job updates, you felt like there was some characters that were coming back and had a shine again. And that I just can't see that happening right now with these LB upgrades. They haven't been significant enough. Although some of them are nice and they're interesting, maybe for like cost limited situations. There's just no way that any of those old units can compete, with a simple LB upgrade. They need full job overhauls at this point. They need better stats. They need a lot.
I would agree. And you know what? Maybe that comes. To be fair, maybe it does come. Who knows? Like, it's going to affect JP and Global equally. So maybe it's the kind of thing they do need you for JP. They maybe amend some of the abilities. Dare I say an MA3? Like, why not? We have an MA2. Why wouldn't you have an MA3? You easily could. Maybe like the MA3 rolls around and they tweak another ability, and kind of like the 140 upgrade. So each unit that gets an MA3, they update an ability. Like, I could easily see that being a lift that they do to compensate for some of the lackluster MA2s.
I absolutely agree with that point because there has been a moment where we have reached a similar kind of situation a few years ago where they just went back and started overhauling all the old year one jobs. And that did bring a lot of those units back because to that point they weren't being used anymore. Like the year 2 and 2.5 units were getting so much better, kind of this similar to the situation now, although I think that now is even worse than it was at that point. So yeah, I hope that they do something because you kind of look at some of these units and there's just no hope for them at the moment.
No, no. And to be fair, I wouldn't mind another overhaul of a couple of the job upgrades to like the skills. The only downside to that is that does nothing for the 100 cost argument because most of the 100 cost units have unique main jobs. Not all of them, but many of them do. And so those with the unique main jobs wouldn't be a benefactor to those job upgrades. But then again, maybe some of the passive abilities are like there's multiple ways you can attack it, but I don't think it's a pressing enough problem that Gumi's really losing sleep over it. But that's essentially what we had for everything for the podcast. Obviously, a lot to talk about. Fourth anniversary, got two great units that are going to change the landscape of our global competitive play for the next couple weeks. A lot to look forward to still with Volk and Ashen King Mont and a couple of those vision cards, and excited to see what comes out after Mont. To be honest, too, I am curious to see, is this the new normal for characters? It'd be very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I do kind of think that we may be seeing like a significant story unit, or maybe even a collaboration for JP. I think maybe that's the next shoe to drop, because obviously Mont is the end of this another story that they've. I mean, they kind of went through this one much quicker than, we kind of got these units rapid fire over a few months here, and that was a lot faster than the kind of the another story 1 and 2. So yeah, I think that we're gonna get back into the main story again. Maybe we'll get Lilith. Maybe we'll get Ramada. Maybe
Yes.
Adelar. Their new outfits have all been seen in the story. So I would like to see them come in.
If I was a betting man, you hit the. I think all three of those units are like best candidates to be coming in the relative near future.
Yeah.
Yeah, but cool. Well, for now, thanks for watching, everybody. Obviously, love to hear your thoughts in the comments. There's a lot of things here that they're not controversial, but they're maybe some hot takes or spicy takes, and I know a lot of people have high hopes for things here too, and obviously this could be a good place for you guys to hash it out with us, and hopefully what we said resonated too. I know we're pretty fair evaluators, I think, in a lot of this stuff. But anything else you're looking forward to this week?
No, just playing around a bit more with Oldoa and Jeume, and getting to know those units better. Really, with the maintenance today, I didn't get as much time as I wanted. So yeah, gonna be diving into that, and we'll have fun with it.
Definitely will. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll talk to y'all later.